What is up, YouTube? Welcome back to the Not a Grom YouTube channel. Today we are doing a very special video. Special not just because of the bike that we're talking about, but special because this is also going to be a farewell to this bike on this channel. Not because the bike is no good or because I didn't like it or anything like that, but because I've moved on to different things and therefore have interests in different bikes. Today we are talking about the 2018 Kawasaki Ninja 400 and the last 3 years that I have spent with mine. Now, it isn't quite exactly 3 years because I bought the bike in May of 2018. So, not quite 3 years, but close enough to call it. Now, much like my Honda Fit video that I just released, where I said that this is a review but also a for sale listing, this particular bike is for sale, and when I do sell it, I will post in the comments below at the very top that it has been sold. However, if I have not posted that yet, that means it's still for sale, and if you would like to purchase it, just leave a comment down below, and I will get in touch with you. Now, before we get into the actual review part, let's talk a little bit about the bike that I have. Again, it is a 2018 Kawasaki Ninja 400. It is solar yellow, which is becoming more and more rare every day. Of course, that was sort of the feature release color other than the KRT. And unlike many of the other models that came after it, it was the only one with this sort of custom gray paint job. All of the other models that were based on the black, you could actually get replacement parts for in later years. But this particular gray was only for the solar yellow 2018. And again, they're getting more and more rare every day. Every time somebody drops one or totals one out, that's one less in the world that'll look like your bike if you happen to buy this one. Another thing is it's never been dropped. I've never wrecked it. I've never laid it down. It's never even fell over before. It has been sitting upright since day one and doesn't have a scratch on it. It currently has just a little under 5,000 miles, but that 5,000 miles has been a very interesting 5,000 miles. It has been all over southern Arkansas, northeast Texas, East Texas, a little bit down in South Texas. I took it down to Austin, Texas and rode it a little bit. It's been ridden in southern Missouri whenever I went and got the exhaust installed and had it dyno tuned along with the standalone ECU. So it has already been all over the country in its short little 3-year, 5,000 mile adventure. But let's move on to the mods I have on it right now. Currently, we're still running the driven racing grips, the TST fender eliminator, the TST integrated taillight, and the Amazon rear sets. I do think those Amazon rear sets aren't great, but I do still have the OEM rear sets, so whoever buys it, you decide you don't like the Amazon rear sets and you want to replace them, I still have the stock ones, no big deal. With that being said, I think the TST fender eliminator and the TST integrated taillight are the best taillight and fender eliminator on the market, so that's very nice that it's already on the bike for you. Now moving on to performance upgrades, we have the driven racing emission delete, the K&N high flow air filter, the MMW BRAP full exhaust. That was the full exhaust that I was going to sell but never did, so it never actually got released. So technically this is a one-of-a-kind prototype full exhaust system. It is also dyno tuned right along with the A-Racer RC5 Mini, which is a standalone ECU. I had this ECU and the full exhaust installed and dyno tuned in southern Missouri at Cameron Jones Racing. I will put a link to his website right here, and I will also show some dyno results. You can see originally stock the bike dynoed 42 wheel horsepower, and then after the full exhaust, the intake, the standalone ECU, and the dyno tune, it made 47 wheel horsepower. Now, I haven't done a top speed run since the bike was dynoed, but before the bike was dynoed, my top speed, now again I'm 6'3", 220 pounds, but my all-time top speed flat out was 117 miles an hour. I would think that with the power that it makes now, it would probably easily do 125 even with me on it. So if you are shorter or weigh less than that, you might even be able to get it up there to that magical 130. Alright, that pretty much covers all of the mods, everything that's been done to this bike, the one that's for sale. I do have it listed for $4,000. Again, if you're interested, leave a comment down below. Or if you found this video in a local listing, just message me back on whatever platform that I listed it on. Now we can get to the review side of things, and we're going to talk about why I originally bought the bike, the sort of features I was looking for when I bought the bike, all of the things I liked about the bike, and all of the things that I didn't like about the bike. So let's get to it. First of all, my very first motorcycle was the Kawasaki Z125, not exactly a real sport bike, not exactly a full-size motorcycle, really just a fun toy that could be used as a daily motorcycle if you wanted it to. But realistically, I was looking for something that was faster, a little more comfortable, especially for me being 6'3" and 220 pounds. And I wanted something beginner friendly because, again, I'd never really been on a big bike before. And being that I knew I was going to kind of be in the budget market, I wanted something that had cheap insurance and good mileage, something affordable. But more importantly than all these things, because this is the one thing that matters the most in this category, is not slow. Now, we can't just sit here and hate on the Kawasaki Ninja 250, because the Kawasaki Ninja 250 taught a lot of people how to ride a motorcycle. It was a first motorcycle for thousands and thousands and thousands of people. However, that thing was slow. And there was no getting around that. It didn't matter that it looked just like the 500. It didn't matter that the later ones looked almost just like the 600. They were slow. And that was something that I didn't want. I didn't want to be that guy with the slow bike, but I also didn't want to buy something that was overly powerful and overly expensive either. And that's where we come to the pros on the Kawasaki Ninja 400 and also Z400, because they are both basically the same bike, just with different plastics and different handlebars and different mirrors, and I think that's really it. First and foremost, the most important thing, the Kawasaki Ninja 400 is not slow. It's not fast, but it is definitely not slow. Like I mentioned earlier, I was able to get it up to around 117 miles an hour, which is not slow. It also has a relatively quick 0 to 60, something equivalent to like a 300 to 400 horsepower sports car. So you've got plenty of power to jump out on the interstate. You've got plenty of power to get out of a sticky situation. You've even got plenty of power to get yourself in trouble or get yourself hurt. While this could be considered a beginner class of motorcycle, it has plenty of power to get you into some very advanced situations. Another pro of the Ninja 400, it is not uncomfortable. You know, I mentioned before that I came from the Z125 and that it was a little bit cramped. The Ninja 400 is a lot less cramped than the Z125. In fact, I wouldn't even necessarily call it cramped. I've sat on a few leader bikes that were actually more cramped and more uncomfortable than the Ninja 400. It has more of an upright sitting position, similar to a touring bike, but not so upright that it makes it feel a little bit too much not like a sport bike, if that makes sense. It still feels very sporty, but you're not leaned all the way into it. So again, not uncomfortable. Another great thing about the Ninja 400 and Z400, it is very lightweight and easy to control. And by easy to control, I don't necessarily mean that an advanced rider is not going to have any fun on it. What I mean is that somebody that's not super advanced is going to have just as much fun on it as somebody that is super advanced on it, because it's so lightweight and flickable. Even a lightweight rider or inexperienced rider is going to have an easy time flicking this thing around the corners. It'll also give some of the smaller and inexperienced riders the feel of a bigger bike without all of the added dangers that come with all that extra power and weight. Another advantage to the Ninja 400 is that it comes with excellent OEM tires. It actually comes stock with Dunlop Sportmax GPR 300s, which are excellent sport bike tires. In fact, before the Ninja 400 came around, all of the Yamaha R3 guys, which at the time was the best bike in its class, those guys were upgrading from their OEM tire that they got from Yamaha. They were trading that tire in for the SportMax GPR 300 as being a far superior tire. So this was their upgrade tire, and the Ninja 400 comes with it from the factory. Yet another pro is cheap insurance. The insurance on these bikes are ridiculously cheap, especially when you compare them to the next step up in a super sport. Based on what I've heard from other people, my insurance is about average, so what I'm going to tell you should be pretty close to what you would get. Full coverage on the Ninja 400 for an entire year was $250. Whereas when I went to the same insurance agency and got a quote for a brand new ZX6R, you know, a 636, full coverage for a year was $1,600. Not $250, $1,600. So that is a big selling point for the Ninja 400, is that your insurance is going to be way, way less than a comparable super sport, which really kind of makes all that extra power and speed that you can't legally use anyway seem a little bit silly. Another giant pro to the Ninja 400 and of course the Z400 is it sounds excellent, not with the OEM muffler. The OEM muffler is extremely quiet. It's way too quiet in my opinion, and we're going to talk a little bit more about the OEM muffler a little bit later. But if you yank off that OEM muffler and basically put just pretty much any aftermarket exhaust on it at all, it sounds excellent. It is one of the best sounding parallel twins on the market right now. If you don't believe me, just go watch some of the exhaust videos on this channel. Now for my final pro, last but not least, this is the best beginner street bike. The Ninja 400 and the Z400 are the best beginner street bikes in my opinion. Now I throw that caveat in there, street bike, because if all your friends ride off-road bikes, or you do a lot of off-roading, or you live out in the country, or you live on a dirt road somewhere, then the Ninja 400 is not going to be the best beginner bike for you. I would say go pick yourself up a KLX 300. That is probably going to be a much more suitable bike for your conditions. But if you live in an urban area where there's plenty of streets and you can go pretty much anywhere on a road or highway or piece of pavement, then you need a street bike, and the best beginner street bike in my opinion is the Kawasaki Ninja 400. Like I said in some of my previous pros, it is not slow, it is not uncomfortable, it is lightweight, easy to control, it has excellent tires on it from the factory, the insurance is cheap, it sounds excellent with exhaust, and this is a bike that you can kind of grow with, and potentially a bike that you may never outgrow. As long as you don't get that itch, that need for speed, that desire to go 160 plus miles an hour, as long as that never happens to you, you might just ride the Kawasaki Ninja 400 for the rest of your life, or for as long as it lasts. And so far as I can tell, they are actually pretty reliable. I've seen Ninja 400s with 15,000 plus miles on them that still run, crank up, and ride just like they were when they were brand new. So as far as street bikes are concerned, the Ninja 400 and Z400 are the best beginner street bikes that money can buy in 2021. Alright, now we move on to the cons, and trust me, there aren't very many, and they are pretty minuscule. When I bought this bike back in 2018, there seemed to be a cooling fan temp sensor issue. This might be something that you want to look at if you're buying a used 2018 with low mileage. It could be something that hasn't been addressed yet, but it's a problem that's easy to figure out whether it's happening and is also inexpensive to fix. Basically, if you notice that your bike is getting hot all the time, especially if it's summertime, you can just put your hand down by the vent next to where the radiator is, and if you can feel air blowing out of there when it says it's hot, then your fan is working and your temp sensor is working fine. If you don't feel air blowing out of there, and especially if your temperature gauge is blinking, then your temp sensor is probably bad and you need to turn your bike off immediately and probably trailer it home. I want to say the temp sensor is like 15 or 20 bucks, and you can replace it in about 20 minutes. Not a big deal. I'm also pretty sure that they fixed this issue in 2019, pretty much from 2019 on. I never heard of anybody else having this issue. So again, this really only applies to the 2018. Another issue is kind of related to the last one, and that is that the temperature gauge reads high. Now, the reality is the temperature gauge is actually just has a low reading, and it just seems to read high because of that low initial setting. I don't know why Kawasaki does this. Apparently they do this on all of their bikes. However, I will say I didn't notice this on the KLX 250. But for those that aren't aware, on the Ninja 400 and Z400, the fan doesn't kick on until it's 1 bar from the top. Meaning, on a normal sunny summer day, your temperature gauge is going to look like it's almost completely maxed out before it starts to cool off. And this, of course, sends the noobs to the forums immediately to ask why their bike is brand new and overheating. It's not actually overheating, that's just how Kawasaki gauges are. And like I said before, just check to make sure your cooling fan is turning on. As long as your cooling fan is turning on and you have plenty of water in your reservoir, you'll be totally fine. There's really nothing else you can do about this. Another con of both the Ninja 400 and the Z400 is the clutch spring issue. Now, I don't know if they ever resolved this, but definitely in the 2018, 2019, and maybe the 2020, I'm not really sure, but definitely the 18 and 19s, the clutch springs would wear out within typically the first 2,000 to 3,000 miles. For some people, it was the first 500 or 1,000 miles. What we figured out about this after doing some part number cross-referencing is that the original springs that came in the bike shared the same part number as the springs in the Ninja 300, meaning when Kawasaki designed this bike, rather than designing newer, heavier springs for the larger, more capable, more powerful engine, they decided just to reuse the springs from the Ninja 300 instead of making new springs for the Ninja 400. Now, if you end up getting one of these, and you'll know because it'll feel like the clutch is slipping really bad, but also that the lever is not returning the way that it's supposed to. The good side is this is only a $30 fix. I've got another video that shows you how to install them and what part number to order and all of that stuff. So there will be a link to that video in the description down below. Moving on to another con, and this was a really minor one for the most part, and that is that the advertised mileage is 75 miles per gallon. However, I never really got 75, maybe 75 max. For the most part, whether I went 85 miles an hour or I went 5 miles an hour or 10 miles an hour under the speed limit, it didn't really seem to matter. Anywhere in between there, I averaged about 65 miles to the gallon pretty much everywhere I went. Now, 65 miles to the gallon is still really good. If you moved up to like a ZX6R, you know, a 636, those get about 45 miles to the gallon, and then the leader bikes get between 35 and 40. So 65 miles to the gallon is still really, really good. It just would have been nice if it would have been that advertised 75 miles to the gallon. Now, moving on to a slightly less minor con. Now, this one is easily rectified, and most people are going to solve this problem pretty much immediately, so I guess it's not that big a deal. But the Ninja 400 and Z400 have the ugliest, heaviest OEM muffler that anyone has ever seen ever. And on top of that, it doesn't even sound good, not even for a stock exhaust. Like, it's super quiet. It really just kind of ruins the sound of that awesome parallel twin. And it weighs like 25 pounds or something stupid like that. On top of that, if you've got a big foot or you like to wear a big boot, you are going to rub your heel on it all the time. Just do yourself a favor. If you're going to buy a Ninja 400 or a Z400, make sure that you consider an exhaust in your budget. It doesn't matter if it's a cheap exhaust or an expensive exhaust. As long as you put something on it, basically anything would be better than the OEM exhaust. Alright, last con, last but not least, and this kind of goes back to something I said earlier in the pros. The seat could be better. This is why I said that the bike is not uncomfortable, because it's also not comfortable. And the only reason that it's not comfortable has nothing to do with the design of the bike. It has nothing to do with the sitting position. The sitting position is actually almost perfect. It has everything to do with the quality of the OEM seat. The quality of the OEM seat sucks. It's essentially just this little thin piece of foam with some vinyl wrapped over the top of it. After about 30 miles or so, you will not be able to feel your butthole at all. Now, Kawasaki does have a solution for this. They call it the Ergo Seat, and it is an aftermarket upgrade, but I think it's a little bit expensive for an aftermarket upgrade. In fact, I think it should have came with this seat from the factory. That's what I think. I think they kind of ripped us off there. This shouldn't have been an upgrade. This should have been something that the bike came with originally, and then everything would have been perfect. And I wouldn't have had to sit here and make this little rant, and a lot more people would have been able to go a lot farther without their butthole going numb. But that's it. That's pretty much it. That's all of the cons. You know, and again, those are all very minor, especially in the grand scheme of things, especially when you compare it to the pros. I mean, I think this is an excellent bike. I give this bike a 9 out of 10. And if the seat wasn't such crap, I would give it a 9.7 out of 10. That's just how I feel about the seat situation. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, well, if you give it a 9.7 out of 10, why are you selling it? Well, like I've stated in some previous videos, but not to make you go back and watch those, I'm just going to tell you. I live in an area where all of the best scenery, the best places to go, the most interesting places, the places that I like to go the most, are all way out in the country. You got to go down a long dirt road to get to them, and this bike just can't take me there. That's why I have chosen the KLX 250 Dual Sport as my primary motorcycle. It's the one that I ride the most. I even ride it more than the Z125, even though the Z125 is still technically my favorite bike. It's just that the KLX is a better motorcycle for the place that I live, and that's why I prefer it over the 400, and because of it, I just don't ride the 400 anymore. It's not because it's a bad motorcycle. Again, other than the seat, I think it's a 9.7 out of 10. It just doesn't suit me personally. That's the only reason that I'm selling it. So if you're considering buying one and it suits your needs, if you are primarily going to ride on the street or you are primarily only interested in street riding, then it is an excellent motorcycle. You will not have any regrets. Go out and buy one right now. But that's it for today's video. If you like this video, hit that like button. If you want to see more videos like this, hit that subscribe button, and we will see you next time. Peace.